An important part of the skeletal system is cartilage. Cartilage has many different functions. It protects the ends of bones. That's called articular cartilage. We'll talk more about that later. And it's also a structural component of various other structures of the body. Composition wise, it's not as hard or rigid as bone, but it's stiffer and less flexible than muscle. And it is avascular and aneural. Avascular meaning there's no blood supply in cartilage, and aneural means there's no nerves. So for cartilage to survive, it must rely upon diffusion from surrounding tissues that do have blood flow and nervous stimulation. And it also does not heal very well because of that. There's three different kinds of cartilage that we find in the body. They have a different amount of collagen and elastin in them. The more collagen the cartilage has, the stronger it is. The more elastin it has, the more flexible it is. So hyaline cartilage is the most prevalent. We have more hyaline cartilage than the other types in the body. It forms the embryonic skeleton. It also forms articular cartilage, costal cartilage, which connects the ribs to the sternum, the larynx or the voice box, air passages like the trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and the external nose. Elastic cartilage is the most flexible, and this forms the external ear and the epiglottis, which helps to close the trachea when you're swallowing food. And then the third type is fibrocartilage. This is the most rigid of the three types. It forms the menisci in the knee, the intervertebral discs between the vertebrae of the spine, and the pubic symphysis, the small piece of cartilage between each half of the pubic bone. This diagram, you can see the locations of the three kinds of cartilage. Remember, elastic is the most flexible. Hyaline is kind of that intermediate in terms of flexibility, and then fibrocartilage is the least flexible. The function of bones. There are five major functions. One is support. We know that the skeleton provides a framework for the body. It also helps to anchor organs in place. Protection. It provides protection of vital organs. Think about the brain, how the cranium completely surrounds the brain. Think about the vertebral column that is surrounding the spinal cord, or the rib cage that is surrounding the heart and lungs. Movement. The bones are connected to muscles, which allow us to move. More bones mean that there's going to be more fine motor ability. Mineral storage. Fat is stored interior of bones, and minerals are stored in the matrix. And then blood cell formation. Hematopoiesis is blood cell formation, and this happens in the marrow cavities of bone. The skeleton itself can be divided into two different divisions. The axial skeleton functions in protection, and the axial skeleton is the main core of the body. It consists of the skull, the vertebral column, and the rib cage. The axial skeleton functions in movement. This involves our appendages, our arms and legs. So the upper and the lower limbs, as well as the shoulder and the hip. And that's how these limbs are attached to the axial skeleton. Bones themselves are one of four different bone types. Long bones are longer than they are wide, and a majority of the bones of our body are long bones. Short bones are as wide as they are long. Flat bones are broad, thin plates, and irregular bones is a category for bones that don't fit into the other classifications. They vary in their shape and their structure. which is why they're irregular. So here is just comparison of the 4 types and giving some examples as well. Bone is living tissue made of living cells. There's 3 main kinds of cells that we find in bone. Osteoblasts are cells that are able to make new bone tissue. They also can repair older bone. Osteocytes are mature bone cells. So these are osteoblasts that have become inactive and now they're trapped in the bone that they've created. And then osteoclasts are cells that break down bone through resorption. It releases acids and enzymes to dissolve and digest minerals. This allows it to remodel injured bone and to replace old worn out bone. So the connection between these 3 are that osteoblasts will create new bone tissue and mature into osteocytes. Those osteocytes are mature permanent bone cells that have been trapped within the bone that they lay down. And then osteoclasts will resorb old osteocytes. Here are 2 animations that are just showing the comparison of osteoblasts, which are bone makers, and osteoclasts, which are bone breakers. In addition to the cells, there's also an extracellular matrix. Extracellular matrix is the substance in the spaces between cells. There is a lot of extracellular matrix in bone compared to skin, where the cells are tightly packed together and there's very little extracellular matrix. In bone, the extracellular matrix is composed of collagen. That is the main connective tissue that we're going to see in bone. And it's also composed of inorganic calcium and phosphorus. Those are the minerals. So that's what we're going to find in the spaces between the living cells.